Today we're going to be learning about the Hiragana chart. So here's our chart, and it actually starts from the top right and then goes down. So it starts from up there, goes down, and then across, and then down, and then across, and then down like this. So just like how you would read vertically in Japanese. Next, once you know all of these main letters, the rest of Japanese sounds are just slightly changed versions of these letters. So let's begin with the top right. We have a, I, u, e, o, and then our K's, ka, ki, ku, te, ko, S's, sa, she, su, se, so, and then the T's, ta, chi, su, te, to. And that su, the T letter su there versus the S letter su. So for example, if I were to say shoes, kutsu, you can hear that extra k, that t in there, kutsu. Or let's say I want to say medicine, kusuri. So it's a softer S there, kusuri. Now we have our N's, na, ni, nu, ne, no. And then our H's, ha, he, fu, he, ho. And so that fu, in English we have the stronger F sound, like food. But in Japanese, this is like a cross between hu and fu, and it's softer. So think of it as like you're gently blowing air out of your mouth, like a balloon. Fusen, fusen. So now on to our M's. Ma, mi, mu, me, mo. Then our Y's, ya, yu, yo. Our hardest letters to pronounce in Japanese are probably the R's. So the Japanese R is like a cross between an R and an L. In English, our R's are the complete opposite of what we do to pronounce these R's. If you have any experience with rolling R's, such as in Spanish, then this will be way easier for you because you only have to get halfway there. So you don't have to roll. If you do, it's totally fine, but you want to get like halfway there. Your goal is to tap your tongue against the back of your top teeth or against like the roof of your mouth. If you can't do that yet, start by pronouncing them more like L's. La, li, lu, le, lo. And then with practice, they become easier. And then if you can roll your R's, that's totally fine as well. You just gotta get halfway to rolling your R's. Ra, ri, ru, re, ro. And lastly, we have wa, o, and So that o, which is spelled as W-O there, wo, we often pronounce it as o, and it's used to mark words and sentences. So you won't really see it used to spell out words. If you want to spell out a word with the o sound, that's actually going to be the o from the far right side there, from the a, I, u, e, o. That it's kind of like you're pressing your tongue against the back of your bottom teeth. Mm. Final note is the Japanese I sounds like E and the Japanese E sounds like E. So that might take a little getting used to if you're a native English speaker. So moving on, I mentioned that once you know these main letters, the rest of Japanese is just slightly modified versions of these letters. So now we're going to get into some other rules and sounds in Japanese. So next, let's go over ten and Maru letters. So ten is like two little small lines, like this, and then Maru is a little circle. Maru is also a period at the end of sentences, and teachers will mark correct answers on like homework and tests with Maru. So we can add ten and Maru to certain sets of letters, and it changes their sound. So K plus ten becomes a G. So if you have ka, ki, kukeko, ten, ga, gi, gugego. S becomes a Z, but she becomes a G. So if you have sa, shi, suceso, ten, za, ji, zuzeso. Then T becomes D, but chi becomes G, and tsu becomes zu. So if you have ta, chi, tsuteto, ten, da, ji, zudedo. Then H with ten becomes a B. So if you have ha, hi, fu, he, ho, ten, now it's ba, bi, bubebo. Lastly, the only set that uses maru are the H's. So if you have ha, hi, fu, he, ho, and you add maru, now it's pa, pi, pupepo. We usually see the S letter, shi and su, as ji and zu. The T letter, chi and tsu, as ji and zu. We don't see those as often. They're usually used in like specific words. Last thing to note, like let's say if you want to write these, you want to write ga. You start by writing the initial letter first in its stroke order. So here on the bottom, we've got the stroke order for ka with ga. If you want to make it ga, you just add the ten. You start with the bottom ten and then the top one. And that's how we would then write these letters. So you would write the initial letter based on its stroke order, and then the ten is usually written from the bottom one and then the top one. So let's go ahead and move on to our next hiragana rule. Next, we have combined letters. So this is when a letter has a small ya, yu, or yo after it. When there's a small ya, yu, or yo, it combines with the letter before it. Usually this ya, yu, or yo is about half the size or height of the other letters, and that's how you can tell. So let's say we've got ki and then a full-size ya. So there on the example, then it's just two different letters. They're just separately pronounced. Ki ya, ki ya, ki ya. But if the ya is tiny, it's like it drops the I from the ki, and now it's one sound. Kya, kya. So for example, kya, kyu, kyo. Then there's shi, ji, and chi. So those three are different. It's like you drop the I and the Y. So if you have shi plus tiny ya, now it's sha. So it's like you keep the A, U, or O from the ya, yu, yo. Or you could say you replace the I with the A, U, or O. So sha, shu, shol. So now the I sound is just gone. Sha, shu, shol. Ja, ju, jo. Cha, chu, cho. But it's just those three letters. The rest of them, they just drop the I sound like ki does. So some other examples would be he plus tiny ya, yu, yo. Hya, hyu, hyo. So it's like you're about to say he, but you drop that I and you just make it a ya really quick. Hya, hyu, hyo. Hya, hyu, hyo. Then we have the ri, the Japanese R. This is another example. Probably the hardest pronunciation in Japanese would be these, unless you already can roll your R's, or you can already kind of get halfway to rolling your R's, then this is a lot easier. Ria, ryu, ryo. Ria, ryu, ryo. If you are not experiencing that yet, just pronounce them like L's. Ria, ryu, ryo. Ria, ryu, ryo. And then as you get more and more used to pronouncing like the L's, you can then get that in between L and R. Like I was mentioning before, you don't need to be able to roll, you just got to get halfway there. But if you do roll, that is no problem. So then on the bottom, we have all of our combinations, and some of them are just actually another E letter with its ten sound, or its maru sound. So all of these are always E sounding letters like ki, he, and ni. So let's go through them. Kya, kyu, kyo. Ya, gyu, yo. Sha, shu, sho. Ja, ju, jo. Cha, chu, cho. Hya, hyu, hyo. Ya, byu, byo. Kya, pyu, pyo. Nya, nyu, nyo. Nya, nyu, nyo. And ria, ryu, ryo. So I'm going to say them again, but now slower. So now you can try to repeat with the video. It's okay if you just listened for the first half. kya, kyu, kyo, gya, gyu, gyo, sha, shu, sho, ja, ju, jo, cha, chu, cho, hya, hyu, hyo, bya, byu, byo, pya, pyu, pyo, nya, nyu, nyo, nya, nyu, nyo, rya, ryu, ryo. And there's our combined letters. So with these ones, I think kind of like with Tenten and Maru, the best thing, or at least the most efficient and helpful thing, is to learn them by the rules. Like K plus Tenten becomes a G. Or here, drop the I, put the ya yu yo, or drop the I in Y for sha shu sho. I think that helps a lot, and also knowing some words that use them with these ones in particular, especially hearing a lot of words that have them, I think is really helpful because these are unique to Japanese. And if you're a native English speaker, you don't really hear sounds kind of like this very often, if at all. So moving on, we've just got a couple more rules left, and that means you'll have gone through all the hiragana rules. So next we have small su. So instead of the letter before it, it now depends on the letter after it. So small ya yu yo is the letter before, small su is the letter after. So whatever is the very first sound after that su, it's going to add an extra sound. So let's say we have te. If you add a small su before it, now it's tte, like mate, mate. Or let's say we have a sa with the tiny su. Now it's SS instead of one S. Kisaten, kisaten. And then I've got some more examples at the bottom, like I'm going out, I'm leaving. Itekimasu, itekimasu. And school, gakko, gakko. Or where did you go? This is casual. Doko ni ita? Doko ni ita? Come back safe. Iterashai, iterashai. Or there's kisaten, kisaten. And ticket, kippu, kippu. So there's our small su, and we now have just one reading and writing rule left. So our last rule are long vowels. So long vowels are when we have two A's, I's, U's, E's, or O's put together. And we have words like this in English, like room, where it's R-O-O-M. But they work a bit differently in Japanese than English. So one thing to point out is that EE is actually spelled as EI in Japanese, and it sounds like A. And then OO is spelled as OU, O. But we don't pronounce them separately. We don't pronounce them as OU or EI. Instead, we just draw out the sound. Also, a lot of times this is actually another letter with that sound, and then it gets combined with the other letter. For example, we have father here, otosan, otosan. So that u after the to is what draws it out. And so the first o sound is from to, otosan. And same with mother, okasan. So okasan, the first a comes from ka, and then the extra a just draws it out as ka. And so if you were to skip them, if you were to not pronounce that extra u or a, they would sound different. So then father would sound like otosan, otosan versus otosan. And mother would sound like okasan versus okasan. So oka might be maybe somebody's name, maybe same with oto. There's also the word oto meaning sound, and oka can mean hill. So it does actually change what the word sounds like. And some other examples. Sometimes you can really hear the difference. Sometimes you can't. So for example, grandma versus aunt, they sound very similar. So grandma, oba-san, oba-san. versus aunt, obasan, obasan. You can really hear the difference with seat versus century. So seat does not have the extra sound, seki, seki, versus century, seiki, seiki. So here you can really tell the difference. Then, so now we've gone through all the hiragana rules. For katakana, they pretty much do the same exact rules except for two things. Katakana, instead of writing an extra a, I, u, e, o to draw out the sound like this here with hiragana, we just put a dash. So there at the bottom you can see like coffee, kohi, kohi. So instead of writing ko, u, hi, I, they just put ko dash hi dash for katakana. Other than that, the only other difference with the rules would be katakana. You can see a lot of different interesting sounds like she, je, sa, si, because these are sounds that they had to make up sounds for because they aren't sounds that originally were in Japanese, essentially. So in katakana, you'll see some weird combos that you don't really see in hiragana. And that is it for our hiragana rules. So for learning hiragana, let's go over what I would recommend for learning hiragana. One, try to get rid of romaji as much as possible. Romaji are when you see like the English letters spelling out a word, like when you see sushi spelled in English rather than in hiragana. And the reason being is because your brain will focus so much on the romaji and doesn't want to remember the hiragana. And realistically, when you need to be able to read Japanese, right? You need to actually be able to read hiragana and katakana and kanji. Romaji is not always going to be there, so it's really important to wean yourself off of romaji. And the more complicated sentences become, the harder and harder it would be to be able to understand a romaji sentence over a hiragana sentence. It just becomes really messy. So one thing you can do is you can look at like the chart and then you can study it for a bit and start with practicing maybe just 4 sets at a time and then slowly build up to the next set. So on my Patreon here, which if you're a free member, you have access to these reading practices like this one here. This one just has the A to O, K, S, and T letter sets. So you can just kind of start with those first 4 sets and then the next page includes these letters plus the next letters you're trying to learn. So depending on where you are in your hiragana as you're watching this video, this might be much harder or this might be a lot easier. But what I see that works the most with people is having a visual, like a picture, and then the word next to it. Because kind of like when you were in school, right? And you learned how to read in English, you had a little flashcard with a picture of a cat. And then it says cat. And then somebody would say cat. And the only reason you now associate that with cat and that you knew that CAT means cat is because you learned it that way. You learned that that's what it meant. So it's the same with Japanese is that you learn to associate the sound with the letter and having a word there really helps you to associate that sound and that word with something. So I'm going to go ahead and look at these words and then you can try to read it and then I'm going to say the words out loud. And this is just kind of a brief instruction on how to teach yourself. So after you have gone over your chart and picked which ones you want to learn, sit down and practice writing the letters for a bit and sounding them out to yourself and then try to read this. And then as you get more used to the reading, you can just jump straight to reading. But writing them and sounding them out will also help a lot too, which in addition to that, writing them in the way they're supposed to be written will make your writing much more efficient because you will get that as a habit. Your brain will remember the habit of how to write that particular letter versus just trying to mimic what it looks like. And then it won't be as easy to do because your brain's just trying to remember what it looks like versus remembering the strokes of how you wrote that particular letter. Anyway, let's go ahead and start. So first we have blue, owl. Now you see that same letter again, so now you know that that's ah, And now you just gotta figure out the next letter. I. Now we have red. Aka. Morning. Asa. Autumn. Aki. So now we've seen this first one in say from love. So you know this is E. And now we just need to figure out what that second one is. Iu. Now we have go. Iku. Pond. Ike. House. Ie. Rock. Ishi. Now we have on top or above, and we've seen both of these letters. Ue. Song. Uta. Home. Uchi. Hill. Oka. So we saw ka earlier from aka for red, and then we just needed to figure out o. So now we see o again with a new letter for sound. Oto. Oto. By. Now we've seen both of these letters. Kau. Kau. Now we have right. Kaku. Listen or ask. Kiku. So we saw ki first in aki for autumn. Shoes. Kutsu. Grass, which we saw that second letter in morning. Kusa. To erase or turn off. Kesu. So we saw that first one ke in ike for pond. Here, koko. There, soko. Over there, asoko. Bloom, saku. Under. Shita. Watermelon. Suika. Seat. Seki. Outside. Soto. Stand. Tatsu. Waterfall. taki, moon, tsuki, arrive, tsuku, one, ichi, close or near, chikaku, and hand, te. So see the way you can bank off of other words you've learned with the same sound, right? That association. And that can be really helpful in those visuals and that association of the sound with a word or with that particular letter. So visuals, from what I've seen, really help people a lot. Okay, so that is everything for our hiragana video. I hope it's been really helpful. I'm going to put a summary at the end of this video. And, well, I'm wishing you the best. Okay, so in summary, here is my step-by-step instructions for learning hiragana and katakana. So number one, avoid romaji as much as possible because you need to make your brain remember the Japanese, not the romaji, and romaji in the long term will not be helpful. And next, so start by choosing the letter sets you want to practice. You could do like 4 of them. You can look at the chart and study it for a moment. At that point, it's okay to look at the romaji just to ensure that you are correct on which letter is which. Then, practice writing the letters you choose and say them aloud as you write. And then make sure you follow stroke order, the way the letters are supposed to be written, based on how the writing pages show you, because this will make it much easier to actually remember and make your writing more efficient when you do handwrite Japanese. It sticks better in your head because your brain is like actually remembering the pattern rather than just trying to mimic what it looks like. Next, you practice reading words that use those letters with as many visuals and words as possible so you can learn to associate the letter with its sound and a word that way. And next, so you're going to start with the A to O, K, S, and T letters and then work your way up. And then the pages that I have on my Patreon are set up that way so that it starts to kind of slowly build on them as you go. And lastly, once you feel more comfortable with the main set of letters, then it's easier to start learning the other rules I discussed, like K plus 1010 becoming a G sound and small ya, yu, yo. Once you get to about like the H's and the Y's, that's usually when you can start to learn those rules. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoy teaching the language and I really appreciate any support that I get. I hope that this video has been helpful and I'm wishing you the best on your Japanese journey. Thank you so much. Mata ne!